Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. This time we're going deep on brain health.
Ooh, brain health.
Yeah, so fascinating stuff using your research. And
Yeah.
also a really interesting interview that I listened to with Dr. Daniel Amen
Okay. Yeah.
from the Rich Roll podcast. Have you heard that one?
I have heard that one. Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, so interesting guy.
Yeah.
And we are going to uncover some really surprising insights on how we can optimize our brain health and potentially avoid cognitive decline
Right.
as we age, which is, something I think about a lot these days.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So it was really fascinating to dig into this with you.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're going to talk about is, did you know that you're making 700 new brain stem cells every day?
Wow. I did not know that. That's a lot.
That's a lot, right?
700 a day.
700 a day.
Okay. Well, I'm interested to know what I can do to maybe make that 750.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
We're going to talk all about that. So one of the things that really struck me going through the research was just how little attention we often pay to the health of our brains.
It's true.
It's like the most important organ in our body, arguably.
Arguably.
And we just kind of take it for granted.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like our heart where we can feel it beating all the time.
Right.
Or our lungs as we're breathing.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's easy to forget about.
Yeah, and it kind of runs the show, right?
It does. It really does. It controls everything we do and think and feel.
Exactly. And when you look at the statistics on dementia and Alzheimer's, it's pretty alarming.
Yeah, it is. I think the statistic that really stood out to me was that 1 in 2 people
Yes.
over the age of 85 are diagnosed with dementia.
I know, it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's a scary thought.
Yeah, so that's, one of the main reasons why we wanted to do this deep dive is to really understand, like, what can we do to protect ourselves?
Yeah, what can we do?
Yeah.
And hopefully, avoid that fate.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the good news is a significant portion of that increase in these diseases
Mm-hmm.
is due to lifestyle factors.
Right.
So things that we can control.
Things we can control. Things we have the power to change.
Yeah. So that's really empowering, I think.
Absolutely.
So, okay, let's talk about some of the things that we can do to improve our brain health.
Okay.
One of the most intriguing things I came across in your research was Dr. Amen's work with brain SPECT imaging.
Right.
Can you explain what that is and why it's so important?
Yes. So SPECT imaging is basically, it's a type of brain scan that measures blood flow and activity
Okay.
in the brain. So it's almost like taking a snapshot
Mm-hmm.
of how your brain is functioning.
Okay.
And it can reveal a lot of really important information. It can show you areas of health, areas of low activity,
Oh, wow.
or even overactivity.
Okay, so it's not just looking at the structure of the brain, like
Yeah.
an MRI, but actually seeing how it's functioning.
Exactly. It's like seeing your brain in action.
That's incredible. I mean, why isn't this more widely used?
That's a good question.
Like, this seems like groundbreaking stuff.
It is groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why it's not as widely used is because traditional psychiatry
Okay.
tends to focus more on symptoms and behavior
All right.
rather than looking at the physical organ itself.
So they're not actually looking at the brain?
Not really, no.
Mm.
They're more focused on what the patient is reporting
Yeah.
and how they're behaving. But Dr. Amen is really a pioneer
Okay.
in advocating for a more holistic approach
Mm-hmm.
that actually includes brain imaging as a key diagnostic tool.
It makes you wonder how many misdiagnoses there are
I know.
because they're not actually looking at the brain.
Right. It's like trying to fix a car without looking under the hood.
Exactly. And I remember that story that Dr. Amen told about his nephew, Andrew,
Oh, yeah.
who was having all these behavioral issues. And it turned out there was a cyst affecting his left temporal lobe.
Exactly. And after they removed the cyst,
Yeah.
his behavior completely transformed.
Like a different person.
A different person. Yeah. It's amazing how directly brain health can impact our behavior and our personality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, how much he must have suffered
Right.
unnecessarily.
Imagine all those years of struggling.
Yeah.
And there was actually a physical issue that could be addressed.
Right. And if they hadn't found that cyst, who knows what would have happened?
Exactly. Early intervention is key.
Yeah. So that story really drives home the point that we can't just separate the mind from the brain.
Right. They're inextricably linked.
Yeah, they are. Okay. So what can we do to keep our brains healthy?
Okay.
Dr. Amen talks about these 11 major risk factors for cognitive decline,
Right.
which he calls bright minds.
Yes. Bright minds.
Kitschy.
I know it's catchy. It helps you remember.
It does. Yeah. So can you break down a few of those for us?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with B, which stands for blood flow.
Okay.
And Dr. Amen calls this the #1 brain imaging predictor of Alzheimer's disease,
Really?
which is scary. So blood flow is crucial.
Okay, so how do we improve blood flow to the brain?
Well, exercise is one of the best ways
Right.
to boost blood flow.
What kind of exercise?
Well, any exercise is good, but he specifically recommends coordination exercises
Okay.
like table tennis or pickleball.
Really?
Yeah, because they activate the cerebellum,
Oh, interesting.
which is the part of the brain that controls balance and coordination.
I'm not very good at those things.
Well, it's never too late to learn.
Okay, I'll have to give it a try.
Yeah, and it can be fun too.
Okay, all right, I'm sold. So what about the D in Bright Minds?
Ah, yes. D stands for diabesity.
Diabetes.
Yeah, it's a combination of diabetes and obesity,
Oh, okay.
and it's a major risk factor for cognitive decline.
So what's the connection between weight and brain health?
Well, studies have shown that people who are overweight or obese tend to have less brain volume,
Really?
particularly in the frontal lobe.
And remind me what the frontal lobe does.
Yeah, so the frontal lobe is responsible for executive function,
Okay.
decision-making, impulse control, things like that.
So being overweight can literally shrink your brain.
It can.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it's not good.
Okay, but the good news is that even losing a small amount of weight
Yes.
can have a significant positive impact.
Exactly. Every pound lost is a victory for your brain.
Okay, I like that. Every pound lost is a victory for your brain.
That's a good mantra.
Okay, what about the T in Bright Minds?
T stands for toxins.
Toxins.
Yeah, we're talking about environmental toxins.
So like what kind of toxins?
Well, things like heavy metals, pesticides, mold even.
So it's not just about what we put into our bodies,
No,
but also what we're exposed to in our environment.
exactly. It's about being mindful of our surroundings.
This is starting to feel a bit overwhelming.
I know it's a lot to take in.
It is.
Yeah.
What about the things that we can't control, like genetics?
Right, G for genetics.
Right.
Yeah, genetics definitely plays a role, but it's not a death sentence.
Okay.
Knowing your family history and getting tested for certain genetic markers
Mm-hmm.
can give you valuable information about your risk factors.
So even if you have a genetic predisposition, you can still take steps to mitigate your risk.
Exactly. Lifestyle changes can make a huge difference.
Okay, that's reassuring. But what about damage that might have already been done?
Right.
Like, let's say someone hasn't always made the healthiest choices.
Mm-hmm.
Is there still hope for them?
I think there is. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's this incredible concept called neuroplasticity,
Okay.
which is basically the brain's ability to change
Mhm.
and improve throughout our lives.
So you're saying even if we've had a few too many late nights or, indulged in a bit too much junk food, it's not a lost cause?
Not at all.
No.
Our brains are constantly adapting and rewiring themselves
Oh.
based on our experiences and our choices.
That's amazing. I remember Dr. Amen had this really cool analogy
Yeah.
about the hippocampus,
Oh.
which is the part of the brain that's responsible for memory.
Right.
And he described it as being like a seahorse.
A seahorse, I like that.
Yeah. And every day we make 700 new brain stem cells there,
Wow.
which he called baby seahorses.
Baby seahorses.
That's so cute. I know. It's such a vivid image.
It is.
And it really emphasizes that even if we've made mistakes in the past,
Right.
our brains have this incredible capacity for healing and growth.
Absolutely. It's like we have this inner power
Yeah.
to regenerate and renew ourselves.
Okay, so what are some things that we can do to nurture those baby seahorses
Okay.
and really optimize our brain health?
Well, we've already talked about exercise
Right?
and a healthy diet,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so many other lifestyle factors that play a role.
Like what?
Sleep is absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Dr. Amen says that poor sleep negatively affects every aspect of brain function.
Oh, I'd love that.
Yeah, we all know how we feel
Yeah.
when we don't get enough sleep.
Yeah, I'm like a zombie.
Exactly.
Mm.
Your focus is shot, you're irritable,
Yeah.
you just don't feel as sharp.
Not a good look.
No. And over time, chronic sleep deprivation can have serious consequences
Really?
for brain health.
So how much sleep should we be getting?
Ideally, 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep per night. That's the sweet spot.
All right, I can do that. What about stress?
Ah, stress. The silent killer.
I know. It feels like we're all under so much pressure these days.
We are. We live in a very stressful world.
Yeah. So how does stress affect the brain?
Well, chronic stress is incredibly damaging.
Mm-hmm.
It can lead to inflammation.
Okay.
It can impair memory, and it can even shrink the hippocampus.
No kidding.
Yeah. So finding ways to manage stress is essential.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, there's so many great options.
Like what?
Meditation is fantastic.
Okay.
Mindfulness, spending time in nature,
Mm-hmm.
yoga, deep breathing exercises, anything that helps you relax and de-stress can benefit your brain.
It sounds like it's all about finding what works for you.
It is. Find what you enjoy and make it a regular part of your routine.
Okay, what about social connection?
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
Strong social bonds are so important for our mental and cognitive well-being.
Okay.
Loneliness and isolation can actually increase the risk of cognitive decline. Yeah, so make time for your friends and loved ones.
So it's not just good for our hearts, but also our brains.
Exactly. It's good for everything.
I like that. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about prevention,
Right.
but what about someone who's already struggling with cognitive issues? Is there any hope for them?
Dr. Amen believes that there's, even for people who have experienced significant brain damage.
Really?
He told this amazing story about a former MLB player, Troy Glaus,
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
who had years of alcohol abuse
Right.
and concussions.
Yeah, his brain scans were pretty shocking.
They were. But after adopting a brain-healthy lifestyle,
Yeah.
his brain actually showed significant improvement.
How long did that take?
Just a few months.
Wow.
It's amazing.
So it's never too late to start making changes.
It's never too late. The brain is incredibly resilient.
That's so inspiring. Okay, so where do you even begin if you're feeling overwhelmed?
Right.
Would you recommend a brain scan for everyone?
A brain scan can be a valuable tool for assessing brain health and identifying areas for improvement,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not necessarily for everyone. I think a good first step is just talking to your doctor
Right.
and being honest about any concerns you have.
And it sounds like even small changes can make a big difference.
Absolutely. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight.
Right.
Just start with 1 or 2 small changes.
Okay, I like that. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
I have.
What are some of the key takeaways you'd like listeners to remember?
Okay, well, first of all, remember that your brain is incredibly adaptable.
Okay.
It's never too late to start making choices that support your cognitive well-being. Even small changes to your diet,
Right.
exercise, routine sleep habits,
Okay.
stress management techniques can have a big impact over time.
And we're not alone in this journey, right?
No, definitely not.
There are resources available to help us?
Absolutely. Dr. Amen's books and websites are a great place to start.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we move on, I have to ask you about something that's been on my mind a lot lately,
Okay.
which is raising kids in today's digital age.
Yeah.
It's like technology is everywhere.
It is. It's unavoidable.
It is. And it's hard to know how to navigate it all.
I know. It's a constant battle.
It is. So do you have any advice for parents who are concerned about the impact of technology on their children's brains?
I do. Dr. Amen actually has a whole book about this called Raising Mentally Strong Kids.
Okay.
And one of the most important things he emphasizes is setting healthy boundaries around technology use.
Okay, so like what kind of boundaries are we talking about?
Well, things like limiting screen time,
Right.
choosing age-appropriate content, and having designated tech-free zones in the house.
But it's easier said than done, right?
It can be. Kids these days are practically glued to their devices,
They are.
but it's crucial to establish clear rules and limits, even if it leads to pushback.
Yeah, so it's about being proactive and setting those expectations early on.
Exactly. And having open conversations with your kids about the potential dangers
Right.
of excessive technology use.
Okay.
It's really important. Yeah, because they need to understand that these devices are designed to be addictive.
Right.
Companies are intentionally using tactics
Yeah.
to keep them hooked.
Like what?
Well, things like notifications
Uh-huh.
and the endless scroll
Oh, yeah.
and those little red dots that make you feel like you have to check something.
Yeah.
It's all very calculated.
So it's not about demonizing technology altogether,
No.
but about helping kids use it responsibly.
Exactly. Empower them to be mindful of their screen time
Right.
and to be critical of the content they're consuming.
Yeah. So it's about helping them develop those critical thinking skills.
Yes.
And not just passively accepting everything they see online.
Right.
Okay, so I think, a lot of parents struggle with this, especially when their kids are teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
Because teenagers naturally want more freedom and independence.
Right. They're trying to figure out who they are.
Exactly. And they push back against rules.
They do. It's part of their development.
It is. Because I think a lot of us struggle with, feeling overwhelmed by stress and anxiety.
Absolutely. It's a common experience.
It is. So how do we cultivate mental strength?
Well, Dr. Amen is a big believer in the power of our minds
Okay.
to shake our reality.
So it's not about, pretending everything is perfect
Right.
or ignoring our problems.
Not at all. It's
Yeah.
about choosing how we respond
Okay.
to those problems.
So, like, what does that look like in practice?
Well, one of the key things is to challenge your negative thoughts. Dr. Amen advocates for what he calls
Okay.
accurate thinking
Okay.
with a positive spin.
What does that mean?
It means acknowledging the reality of the situation,
Right.
but choosing to focus on the potential for growth
Okay.
and learning.
So it's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between realism and optimism.
Exactly. It's not about being naive.
Right.
It's about choosing to see the good.
Okay. But sometimes those negative thoughts
Yeah.
can be so persistent. Like, it's like they just keep coming back.
Yeah, I know.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do about that?
Yeah, exactly. So do you have any tips for dealing with that?
I do.
Yeah.
Actually, Dr. Amen has this fun technique
Okay.
where he suggests giving your mind a name.
Giving your mind a name.
Yes. He actually named his mind after his pet raccoon.
A raccoon.
I know it sounds funny,
It does.
but it can be helpful.
How so?
Well, it creates some distance
Okay.
between you and your thoughts.
Right.
So instead of feeling like you're drowning in those
Yeah.
thoughts, you can observe them
Okay.
without getting completely swept away.
So when those negative or anxious thoughts start swirling,
Yeah.
you can say, okay, raccoon,
Exactly.
I hear you, but I'm not going to let you run the show.
That's it. It's about taking back control.
Yeah. Love that.
Hmm.
What about self-compassion?
Oh, that's so important.
Yeah.
We need to be kind to ourselves,
Yeah.
especially when we make mistakes.
It's hard, though.
It is. We tend to be our own worst critics.
Yeah, we are. So how do we cultivate more self-compassion?
Well, one way is to imagine that you're talking to a friend
Okay.
who's going through a tough time.
Right.
What would you say to them?
I'd be supportive.
You would.
Yeah. And encouraging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we need to extend that same kindness
Mm-hmm.
and understanding to ourselves.
So it's about being on our own team,
It is.
being our own biggest cheerleader,
Yes,
even when we stumble.
absolutely.
This has been such an inspiring deep dive.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Thank you for all of your insights.
You're welcome.
I feel like I've learned so much, and I'm really excited to start implementing some of these things.
Yeah, me too.
So what's the one thing that you hope listeners will take away from this episode?
I hope they remember that they have more control over their brain health
Yeah.
than they realize,
Yeah.
and that it's never too late to start making changes.
That support their well-being.
Yeah, exactly.
The brain is an incredible organ,
It is.
capable of healing and growth.
Throughout our lives.
What a powerful message of hope.
It is.
So thank you again for joining us
Thank you for having me.
on this deep dive into brain health.
It's been fun.
And remember, if our brains are constantly changing based on our experiences and choices,
Yeah.
what kind of brain do you want to create for yourself moving forward?
Mm,
That is the question.
that's a good question.
Until next time, keep those baby seahorses happy and healthy.
I will. You too?